We did not have enough space to lie down. We slept sitting upright, leaning on each other's back.
I personally even experienced watching public execution.
Teenagers watched South Korean drama Squid Game, and 3 of them were executed publicly, 15 and 16-year-olds.
What up, though? Another reaction. Today we got something different, y'all. We got something a little different. We got a story about a man that was tortured in North Korea. So he lived the real life. You know how they have the Squid Games? He lived the real life Squid Games, like how they be having those games where there's survival games and stuff like that. He lived the real life version of that. So he was captured and tortured in a boot camp at a very young age. Let's get to the story.
Not many people manage to escape from North Korea.
I personally even experienced watching public execution.
Millions of people died of starvation in 1990s, and many children actually were living on the street during those several years.
We did not have enough space to lie down. We slept sitting upright, leaning on each other's back.
Few teenagers watched South Korean drama Squid Game, and 3 of them were executed publicly, 15 and 16-year-olds.
I was 17. My survival instinct told me I need to escape.
Bro. Ooh, I got the chills just now, bro. Imagine that. Imagine that, bro. Imagine that. You're just on your phone, you click a link, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. You get killed for that. Or just watching an episode of Squid Game or something on Netflix or Hulu. You get killed for that. And I'm pretty sure that's not the only thing not to watch. I'm pretty sure, bro. That's crazy, bro. That's real life horror, bro. Like, that is crazy. That's insane.
Imagine you're just 11 years old, summoned to the town square alongside every other kid in your neighborhood, forced to watch a man tied to a post. A firing squad steps forward, rifles raised. The first bullet rips through the prisoner's eyes, and the crowd screams, but you can't look away. That was normal life for Timothy Cho, a North Korean child caught in one of the most repressive regimes on Earth. He didn't just watch horrors, he lived them.
For sure.
Eventually, he'd be locked up in cells so cramped there was no room to lie down, forced to witness shameless brutality, starved to the brink, and beaten senseless for the crime of existing. For Timothy, this was reality not once, but 4 separate times. And somehow, he got out alive.
Yeah, shout out to Timothy for that. Because, look, I was doing the same thing, bro. The minute I was captured or whatever, I was out of there, bro. They was going to have to kill me the first night. I was out of there. I'm not playing it. Because you got to think about it, right? It's either you risk dying there or you risk dying trying to free yourself. Die a hero, bro. Why not? Why not die with some honor, bro? Instead of dying a coward trying to kiss ass, basically. Because you don't want to live like this, but you got to because you don't want to die. But you're still going to die regardless because all you need to do is not like you. All someone need to do is piss you off. You know what I'm saying? That's it. They just pick you out, just kill you. So why not? Why not try to escape? Shout out to Timothy for that, man. He's a real hero. He's a real survivor. Survivor.
Today we're plunging into a twisted underworld of political mania, prison gulags, and a system of torture so extreme it makes Hollywood's darkest spy thrillers look tame. This is not fiction. Every fact has been verified, every grim detail is anchored in survivor testimony and human rights reports. Prepare for a narrative that's part espionage thriller, part survival epic, and 100% real. How did a terrified teenager manage to cross one of the world's most militarized borders twice? How did a single photo taken by a student spark an international storm that saved Timothy from a certain death? And most shockingly, how on earth did a feared South Korean gangster help Timothy cheat execution for good? Timothy Cho was born to parents who were both high school teachers, an otherwise respectable standing in North Korea. Growing up, he thought of the Kim family as near divine figures.
I loved them. I thought they were God because I was brainwashed and I didn't know.
That kind of indoctrination starts basically when you're in diapers. School children are drilled to respect and praise the Kim dynasty 24/7. But one morning, when Timothy was only 9, he came home to an empty house. His parents had vanished. They had fled across the border to China without warning. In North Korean society, that's high treason. Yeah, we're talking potential execution level betrayal. Overnight, Timothy went from a normal patriotic kid to an orphaned branded son of a betrayer.
Wow. So that's why I'm guessing that's why he became, you know, a prisoner to the system, because his parents they became traitors. So once they became traitors, he became a prisoner. He became like a fugitive. Like, no, they became fugitives, and he became a traitor because his parents are fugitives and traitors. That is crazy. All because they fled to China. But you know what's even crazier? Holy Jesus. What's even crazier is that they fled to China and left him. Like, they just upped and left and not said nothing to him, and he was a kid. Because remember, he was 17 when he escaped. So he was way younger than that when they left. That is fucked up, bro.
My auntie and uncle were there. They would not ask me if I had eaten at all. So I left to my uncle's house in tears and then went to the market picking up food on the floor.
No one would hire him. Authorities shunned him, and even relatives turned him away.
They was doing that because he was a traitor. And if they helped him, they're a traitor. That's why they was doing that. And that's crazy. For it to be a kid, bro, and living like that is insane, bro. Oh my God, bro. That's like some real life medieval shit.
Joined the ranks of the Kochebi, the homeless children scavenging through train stations, living off scraps, and sleeping in corners. This was the mid to late 90s, during what the North Korean regime called the Arduous March, a catastrophic famine that killed up to 1 million people. Timothy scrambled for leftover corn or grains, sometimes going days without anything but water.
Damn.
Eventually, his grandmother took him in, but food was scarce everywhere. Meanwhile, the regime hammered into people's heads that Kim Jong-il was the nation's savior, single-handedly defending them from a world of imaginary enemies.
And when I was 7, Kim died. First, Kim died. And I literally cried and didn't sleep for 3 nights.
For Timothy, daily existence became a real-life version of the Hunger Games, minus any glamour or tributes. The only difference? There was no one coming to rescue him. By age 17, he realized he had no future in North Korea. Starvation was a constant threat, and the stigma of his parents' defection made him feel hopeless. He decided to escape. That's right, a teenager, hungry and alone, risking his life to cross one of the most guarded frontiers on Earth. Because
Shout out to Tim for that. Because it's either stay there and die, or die with some honor, trying to get up out of there. So shout out to Tim. Tim is a real life survivor.
staying behind meant certain death. So in the early 2000s, Timothy Cho made his first break for the Chinese border. It's a move that countless North Koreans have attempted, but few accomplish. At that moment, you might have thought that good news was finally coming, but fate had something entirely different in store. In 2004, Timothy joined 17 other North Koreans desperate to flee. Their plan? cross into China, trek through unforgiving terrain, then slip over the Mongolian border and request asylum. If they succeeded, they might find a path to South Korea or another sanctuary. If caught, they'd be sent right back to North Korea. A fate that...
And I bet you they gonna kill him when they get him back, when they go back. Whenever they try to escape, they either gonna put them on some excruciating punishment or just end their lives. Real life medieval, bro. That is crazy.
That could mean prison, torture, or a bullet to the head. They actually got close to Mongolia, but in the final moments, Chinese security forces swooped in and arrested the entire group.
They were warning us to stop, and then they started shooting in our way, and you could see that bullet comes next to your feet. We were no longer able to run and were arrested there.
The authorities labeled them illegal economic migrants. Under a pact with Pyongyang, Beijing forcibly deports North Koreans, turning a blind eye to the horrors that await them back home. As soon as Timothy's group landed back on North Korean soil, they were split up and thrown into different detention centers. He was shoved into a cramped cell with about 50 inmates. People were half starved, packed like sardines, and reeking of sweat and terror. Timothy soon discovered that prison in North Korea is basically slow-motion torment. If he was lucky...
That's how it is in every prison. That's for every prison. But this right here is just another level. This is not even slow motion torment, bro. This is torture right here. That's what this is. This is torture. This is torment and torture.
He got 2 watery scoops of cornmeal a day. He was aggressively interrogated by the guards, demanding to know whether he'd met any Westerners that helped him plan this escape. One horrifying morning, he experienced a shocking reminder of how dangerous the prison was.
When I woke up, I realized that the man I was leaning against was dead.
Oh my God.
He died from torture, lack of medical care, and starvation.
The guards came in, dragged the corpse out like a rag doll, while Timothy just sat there, numb. It's the kind of trauma that would break most people.
Yeah, that gave him some power. If I'm Timothy, that would have gave me some power. So I know that gave him some power. He's about to get up out of there again, y'all. Watch this.
Public executions
And I bet he's gonna succeed this time.
are routine in North Korea, but dying anonymously in a cramped cell is even more common, especially for state-branded traitors who attempt to defect. And if you're inspired by Timothy's resilience and want more survival stories, hit that like button and subscribe to How to Survive. Before we follow Timothy's next big move, let's talk about where he nearly perished, the North Korean prison system. You've probably heard of gulags from your high school history class on the Soviet Union. Well, the North Korean version is still alive and kicking. An ugly network of labor camps, interrogation centers, and secret facilities. The United Nations calls them crimes against humanity. Amnesty International has compared them to Nazi-era horrors. This isn't some outdated 1950s scenario. It's happening now. An estimated 80,000 to 120,000 North Koreans currently remain trapped in labor camps, according to Amnesty International. Some are children no older than Timothy was. In these facilities, people are systematic.
That don't sound familiar? That don't sound pretty familiar to you? Come on now. Do your homework. Do your homework on Trump, man. Do your homework on Trump. Like, last week, I was watching the news and 3 kids, U.S. citizens, born here, was deported because their parents was not born here. You know what I'm saying? So they have citizenship rights, but they was still deported. So they're now breaking the laws because of what Trump is letting pass, because of all the laws that Trump is passing. You feel me? I ain't no political guy, but you know I watch the news here and there. So, and I know that ain't supposed to be like that. Like they're not even resident. They're a citizen. So they have all rights to be here. But yeah, it sounds pretty familiar. Do your homework on Trump, man.
Starved and subjected to unimaginable torment. That's right, kids too. It's beyond brutal. Many never see the outside world again. Public executions happen for trivial offenses, like trying to watch foreign TV or listening to South Korean pop music. Yes, you heard that correctly. If you're caught with a K-pop playlist on your phone, you could wind up dead. That's how insane the system is. Former prisoner Shin Dong-yuk famously recounted watching his own mother's execution. Another defector, Kim Kwang-il, drew pictures showing how guards forced inmates into pigeon torture. Arms tied behind their backs, hung from a ceiling so they couldn't stand or sit. Fainting meant being whipped until they were conscious again. He also described the pump torture, forcing inmates to squat or jump repeatedly until their legs give out, only to be kicked and whipped back into motion.
Oh no.
There's the motorcycle or car position, where victims must crouch with arms extended as if gripping handlebars, again enduring whips and kicks whenever they slip. Food rations are criminally low. People are so hungry they eat rats, frogs, and snakes alive just to survive. Let's not even get started on the forced labor. Some detainees spend 16 hours a day doing back-breaking work. Others are assigned to mines so unstable that cave-ins are basically guaranteed.
You literally have to crawl inside and digging coals out. And often mines collapsed, and many young, large boys and girls are killed or even losing their arms and legs.
Witnessing
I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I think I'd have probably died of starvation. Because I was not eating no rat. Boy, I was not eating no rat or no snake, bro. You're crazy. You are crazy. I don't care about no survival at that point, bro. I would have started eating leaves. I don't care, bro. I don't care. I would have not eaten no rat or no snake.
such nightmares is enough to break anybody, but it only fueled Timothy's drive to try escaping again.
But you know what's crazy though? When you get that hungry and you're at that point where you feel like you would eat anything to move, I ain't never been there. I ain't never been there. I ain't never been there, bro. And thank God I ain't never been there. So I don't know how that shit feel. You might think twice. A rat might look like a steak.
Now, how did Timothy survive? Sheer luck, some would say, or maybe the fact that he was a minor. After months of beatings and near starvation, he was unexpectedly released. That alone is extremely rare.
I was lucky, very a miracle. And when I was released from this prison cell, I could walk.
Though battered in body and spirit, he returned to his grandmother's home, watched by local authorities, and prayed he wouldn't get hauled back again. But if you think that'd stop him from seeking freedom once more, you'd be wrong.
Come on,
Timothy
man.
was barely recovering from his trauma and living under strict probation. Unable to bear the constant terror of surveillance, he soon committed to another daring plan to escape.
Yeah.
His second escape route would be radically different. Instead of trekking to Mongolia, he'd pass through China, head to Shanghai, and then try to find sanctuary in a foreign-run institution like an embassy or international school. That might force the Chinese authorities into a diplomatic standstill, preventing them from deporting him back to North Korea. It was his ultimate Hail Mary. So in 2006, Timothy once again crossed the Tumen River into China. That border is guarded by barbed wire, electric fences, and watchtowers. He managed to slip through with a small group of refugees, forging IDs to move deeper into Chinese territory. Under the constant threat of arrest, they traveled over 1,200 miles by bus and train until they finally reached Shanghai. It's one of the world's biggest cities, a neon jungle that must have felt like another planet compared to North Korea's darkness. In 2007, Timothy and 8 others finally made it to the Shanghai American School, hoping it would be like stepping on US soil. A path to freedom.
We climbed up the fence of the American school. It was quite high. We climbed up and we went inside school. We had the paper. We are North Korean refugees, please help us. And we thought we were successful.
For a moment, adrenaline surged. Maybe this was it. Maybe
Damn.
they'd just beaten this
Damn, don't tell me he ain't make it. I thought this was his getaway.
system. But the school administrators, unprepared for this crisis, called the Chinese police. Within minutes, dozens of officers stormed in. They pinned Timothy to the ground,
Damn.
baton swinging right in front of horrified students. One teenage bystander reportedly said she'd never forget that sight. These desperate individuals being dragged away like criminals. Timothy found himself tossed into the Shanghai International Prison for foreign detainees. Paralyzed with dread, he thought, this is the end. Because being deported back to North Korea a second time was practically a guaranteed death sentence. So he tried to end his own life in that prison cell. Timothy swallowed the stash of sleeping pills he'd secretly hidden in his clothes, convinced it was his only way out. But fate had other plans. He woke up, disoriented yet alive, in the same miserable cell.
See, God wanted you to live, Tim. God wanted, he knew he was gonna get you up out of there, you heard? He knew he was gonna get you to safety. You were his soldier, man. He wanted you to live for a reason, so you could tell this story right now. You heard? Shout out to you, Tim. You a real survivor.
Not exactly the rescue he hoped for, but things took an unexpected twist. One of his cellmates was a South Korean ex-gangster who'd found religion. This unlikely friend gave Timothy a Bible and prayed over him, urging him to hang in there. Meanwhile, outside those bleak prison walls, the story of the Shanghai Nine spread like wildfire. Some students at the Shanghai American School leaked photos of the group's arrest to a journalist. Human rights groups and various international communities latched onto the story, launching protests at Chinese embassies worldwide.
Okay, so because they was on a different soil now, you know, things operate different. These kids got cell phones, and they can use them. So they recorded. And you know, times that we in now, everything goes viral. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's what happened. Ah, man. Shout out to them cell phones.
That pressure worked. After weeks of global outcry, the Chinese government made a highly unusual decision. Instead of shipping Timothy and the others to North Korea, they would deport them to the Philippines. From there, South Korea and possibly the UN Refugee Agency stepped in. The day Timothy boarded a plane out of China, he couldn't believe his luck. He'd cheated death twice now.
When I left the prison cell, one of the prisoners said, we are seeing a miracle happen in front of our eyes.
Freed at last, Timothy traveled from Manila to Seoul, then onward to the United Kingdom. Although he'd already experienced modern city life in Shanghai, stepping once again into a world of dazzling skyscrapers, fully stocked stores, and uncensored internet left him wide-eyed all over again. A stark contrast to everything.
Bro, that's like coming out of a cave, bro. That's like a real life caveman type. You know what I'm saying? Like real shit. That's like you seeing the world for the first time. Psst. He probably ain't even know certain shit exists, bro. Like, yeah, facts. You just said it. That's crazy.
He'd known under North Korea's suffocating darkness. As of 2023, North Korea ranks second on the global list for most repressive media environments. That's a big reason why Timothy had no idea how the outside world functioned until he experienced it firsthand. After settling in Britain, Timothy...
And that's what's going on in Russia. That's why Ukraine and Russia was going at it, I think. Because I ain't even gonna get into that, but I think that's what was going on. I watch the news. Don't get me wrong. I watch the news. I know the news ain't wrong. The news ain't lying to me. You know what I'm saying? If they lying to me, they lying to everybody. And that's what was going on in Russia. So yeah.
He learned English, pursued higher education, and decided to share his story, hoping to spotlight those still locked in North Korean gulags. He collaborated with groups like Open Doors UK, advocating for persecuted Christians, some 50,000 of whom may be imprisoned in North Korea's labor camps for their faith alone. That number, by the way, is nearly half of all individuals detained across the regime's broader penal system. Timothy's incredible resilience became a beacon for other defectors. But the question remains, what's it like to carry such memories? How do you speak about the unspeakable and not crumble?
He don't even speak about it, I bet you. He probably do now. You know, after a while, you probably think about it like a way to keep living, you know, to keep energizing yourself to do more. You know what I'm saying?
For Timothy Cho, the nightmares remain fresh, fueling him to keep speaking out. His story is a sobering reminder that behind every grim statistic on North Korea's atrocities stands a person with a family, a childhood, and fragile hopes for a better life. Now a vocal activist, Timothy shares his ordeal at schools, on news programs, and at international forums. You might wonder, what difference can one person make? Remember this, global awareness can save lives. In Timothy's case, photos of his mistreatment sparked an international outcry and changed his fate. More than 33,000 North Koreans have escaped to South Korea since the late 90s. Many endured ordeals as brutal or worse than Timothy's. Still, each story like his reminds us of the countless people still trapped behind the razor wire. Let his journey stand as both a warning and an inspiration, showing us what unchecked tyranny can produce and how human resilience can fight back.
Tim is a real survivor, I'm not gonna lie. God did not want him to go. God had bigger plans for him. So shout out to Tim for not giving up. You feel me? And shout out to them cell phones too. Them cell phones, shit, man.